Thank you very much. Thanks so much for coming, you guys. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think Charles was scared to come up here alone.
I think maybe a few people might have some questions and stuff. First, I want to apologize for the image quality. It was a little bit jerky and a little bit kind of grainy and stuff like that. I hope it didn't make anybody too sick. There's just some technical stuff. We didn't have $1 million to do that, so. But we'll get it right. That's going to do it. Thank you. Thanks, Linda. First, I'd like to really give a huge shout out to some of the people who are in the movie who are here. In no particular order, we have Dr. John Robinson from UBC. Please stand up, John. We have Mark Jacket, Dr. Mark Jacket from SFU. We have Bruce Sampson here, former VP of BC High. We have Ken and Arlene Boone, who are farmers in the Peace River area. Brad and Diane Culling, who worked so hard. They worked so hard in the Site C issue. They're biologists from the Site C area. Bill Shepard is here. Bill made it sound like you could understand it. Bill, stand up. Our two sons, Pavel and Fabio Wilkinson, are here. They worked on the movie like crazy. Where are you guys? I know I'm probably missing something.
Gwen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gwen is here. Gwen Johansson. Please stand up, Gwen. Is there anyone else that's hiding in the back? Oddly, I don't think anybody from industry came.
No, we also wanted to thank all our friends who came to previous screenings to help us with the editing, and that was really great.
Yeah, that's true. We bored you guys to tears with it so many times. And to be honest, I apologize for how talky it is. Like, I know it's just tons and tons of talking heads. I wish there was like more car chases or something, but because it must get awfully boring. But it's just the information is so important. We wanted to make it 4 times longer because the things that these people said were just so eye-opening. But I know it gets tiresome when people talk so much. Anyway, are there any questions? Does anybody want to ask anything? Yes.
How much are we exporting to the United States from all the energy forms, and who's benefiting? Couldn't we just cut them off?
Well, I want to stress, first of all, that I'm not an expert in any of these things. I mean, there's some experts in this room that have spent their lives studying it. My sense of it, just my personal opinion, having talked to these people quite a bit, is that, yeah, of course, a tremendous amount of this is being exported, and when they're talking about building the pipeline across to the Pacific, then a lot more will be exported, possibly to Asia. That kind of, my perspective on it, and I know not everyone shares this point of view, is that, yeah, it's kind of bad that we're, doing horrible things to create energy for profit, to sell to people, in other countries. But at the same time, we're all people, and we all make these individual choices. And if people in Texas stopped driving their Hummers, and if they turned their air conditioners down a few notches, we wouldn't be doing that because there would be no market for it. So it really does start with us, I believe. I mean, there's a ton of policy decisions that can be made that are influenced by our politicians. But I personally can't influence that. What I can do is turn the thermostat down.
Yeah, right on.
Anything else? Yes?
Your awareness for this film, did this come from Site C, or did it come from the tar sands? And was there a direction that this process went through?
That's a good question. It started with Site C because I've always been really interested in dams and hydroelectric power and the way that it's generated and stuff. And but when I got up there for the first time, Pavel and I went up, we saw that it was all connected, like Ben Parkett says in the story, that these things are all connected. And we saw that, yeah, Site C is horrifying to think that they're going to bury this extraordinarily beautiful valley. It's impossible to describe, even just seeing it on the screen, how beautiful this place is. And the idea of burying it underwater, I mean, it would be sort of like flooding the Grand Canyon. And so, but it's all kind of connected. And people would say, like those people we met, the river people in Hudson's Hope would say, oh yeah, just look on the other side of the hills here. We've got all this natural gas fracking going on. And gee, they're taking the water out of the river. And, I mean, I'm certainly miles from being a scientist, so it's taken me a long time to just sort of get a sense of the connective tissue between these things. And I still don't claim to be any kind of expert on it, but clearly there's a lot of stuff going on up there, like more than you can possibly imagine, more than we could really show very well. Yes?
Charles, I noticed that in the exploration that you have there for different energy sources, you didn't touch much on solar particularly, and it is a clean, as far as I understand it, really clean, or maybe the cleanest source of energy. Why didn't you get into it? Maybe it's not part of the scope of your production, but I'm curious.
This is a solar man. Well, the reason is pretty simple. It's because the theme of the movie has to do with the impacts that are happening in the Peace River region. And the biggest impacts that are being caused are these 4 energy sources. It's true that, I mean, Ken and Arlene Boone, who are here tonight, have essentially gone off the grid by building solar panels and selling power back to the grid because they're generating electricity. So yeah, solar is an awesome energy source, but like John Robinson said in the film, we constantly go to the supply side as if we can continue to live the way that we're living by just changing supply. That doesn't appear that it's going to happen. I don't know if any of you guys noticed in the news 3 or 4 days ago, but there was a huge riot at a city in China. The people were upset because their children were getting sick drinking the river water, and they lived in the city that produces the most solar panels of any place on Earth. And all the toxic chemicals from producing those panels were making the people sick. So like Ben Parkett said, there doesn't appear to be much of a free lunch anywhere here. Yes?
Yeah, hi, Charles. This isn't a question, it's a comment. It's been really hard. I'm one of those people who's trying to stop Site C, and it's been really hard to get the politicians, the media, Southern British Columbians to pay any attention at all because it's 1,300 kilometers away, and people just don't think about it. And I think what you've done and what other people are trying to do in terms of getting the word out about Site C and those connections with the oil and gas industry and so forth, I think it's so important. And thank you. We just got to figure out some way to get this message beyond this room.
Yes.
And
I have to say though that Site C is a terribly important issue, but it's a symbol for all of the terribly important issues that are happening around the globe. And I believe what the scientists in this room said. I believe what Bruce Sampson says. I believe what John says, and I believe what Mark says, that this isn't debatable. There is no debate in the scientific community. We have hit a wall, and we can't go on living this way. We can't. Building that dam means that we're committed to thinking that we can go on living this way. We can't. Whether it's just up to us to realize that, but it's not as if we have a choice. There is no choice. Yes.
Maybe you might be able to answer this a little bit better, or maybe both of you. But first I want to say, actually, I thought it was an extremely well done documentary. I go to a lot of these, and I thought it was very riveting and easy to follow, so kudos to you. Secondly, I wouldn't say I have a lot of hope in terms of the trajectory that we're on. And one of the things that you brought up in the film was not just related to the mitigation of the greenhouse gases, but also BC's lack of ability to adapt to such changes should we flood the second largest agricultural area in BC, which seems pretty important. So I'm wondering, to both of you, in terms of where things are at right now with Site C, and besides focusing on our own demand, what is the greatest opportunity for us to make sure it doesn't go forward?
Well, again, I'm not an expert on this, and there are people in this room who spent their lives really dealing with this Site C business. But what I know is that if it becomes an election campaign issue, it won't happen. My personal sense of it, which many of the people, my friends in this room and elsewhere, who are concerned about Site C feel that it's really come to a razor's edge, and it could easily not get built. I personally feel if we could just hold out, if we could stop it for a couple more years, that we'll come to our senses and we'll find ways of economizing such that, as Bruce said, we won't need to build it ever. Wouldn't that be cool if we could do that? I mean, my lights at home are not turned on right now. And it's cold in here. See how cool that is? Like,
job is quite a complex in one sense, but so simple on the other. In the other sense, you know, it's quite clear, I think, what needs to be done. It's just getting that political momentum to actually do what needs to be done, which is why I'm so happy that you had in the film the discussion about direct action. And next week, we're going to have an Occupy Vancouver movement that starts at the Art Gallery. And it's starting one of these areas, one of these movements where we're trying to say, okay, so how do you actually push for the things that we all need, we all know we need to do? And I was so inspired by your movie. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we'll find out more about that demonstration, but I want to say that just because Mark got to say those wonderful words about how he doesn't think that enough will happen in time, it doesn't mean that all of the people that we talked to didn't say similar things. This is not just one person's idea. I think there's a building consensus that we may not get there in time unless we take action. Yes?
Hi, so on the question of action and what we can do, my name is Trian. I've worked with a lot of people in this room to fight Site C as well as fracking. And I think one of the most important things we can all do is go home and write our politicians about what we learned today and let them know that we want them to stand against Site C and fracking. And right now, actually, the environmental assessment for Site C was just announced on Friday, so it's going to a joint panel review. And there'll be a public comment period from the 7th of this month to November 7th. So there's an opportunity for all of us to comment into the environmental assessment to say what we want, what they want to study. It's the first of, I think, probably about 3 comment periods, and there'll be hearings and stuff as well. So I encourage everyone to go home, check that out. There's lots of websites, the Peace Valley Environmental Association, great resource, so check it out and make sure you're writing a politician.
For sure. I'd like to introduce Tina, because so many of you know Tina. Tina Schleisler is the producer of the movie. I have to say that all the good stuff in the editing was all Tina's idea. Yes?
My question is, once we leave this room, is this movie going to be available if we wanted to refer people to it, or is it available to the public to see after this viewing?
Well, thanks for that. There's a series of screenings that are being scheduled for Up in the Peace, which I'm so proud of and I'm so excited about. 4th, 5th, and 6th up in Port St. John. I keep telling everybody we're having a screening in DC. That's Dawson Creek. And also there's, of course, another screening here on Thursday, but this leads me to give a shameless plug for it. And it's because we all think the subject is so important. It's not like we're going to get rich or anything, because well, trust me, we're not making any money, we're not going to. But vote for the movie today, right here, if you will. Vote for it, because if we do well, then that will incline other festivals to take it. And if we could get other festivals to get this message, we would get a lot more interest. Because there are people outside of our province, people all around the world who have a huge impact on what we do here, right? If people in Texas see this movie, in our last movie that played at the festival 2 years ago down here, won at the Houston World Fest, people in Portugal saw it. So if you can help us to get the movie popular so it can be seen, and a movie like this, it's hard because it's people talking, right? And they're talking about BC, but if you can help us with that, then it'll go places and people will talk about it. Right, so please do.
How do you vote for it?
Here, there's ballots that you just fill out.
There's boxes on the way out. They say Rogers. You can fill out a card.
Great.
Yes.
And you can text your vote.
I found it particularly disturbing that these companies that are using so much of our resources aren't paying for any of this water that we're taking. And is there any kind of campaign or something you could recommend that we do to get that regulated, or
Well, I think you put your finger absolutely on the heart of the issue. And everybody, they said it over and over and over again, is that it's not as if the resource companies are populated by evil people. Like, I look at want ads sometimes, and I very rarely see a want ad that says, you know, wanted, evil person to destroy environment. Like, it doesn't work, you know, good health benefits, it doesn't work that way. But the thing is that these guys need some regulation. And we've got this revolving door that goes back and forth between government and industry, and we just have to say that that's not acceptable. We need to demand regulation of the industries. It's not that we want to shut them down, it's just that we want them to run in our interest. The landscape is littered with, up there, up in the north, literally littered with examples of really irresponsible resource extraction. That's not in anyone's interest over time. Even in the industrialists' interest, it's not in their interest. But that's us. Like, we've kind of dropped the ball. We don't go to meetings. Democracy is run by people who go to meetings, and we got to start going to meetings again. And we got to start having our voices heard, right?
I just want to say it's an excellent film and really cogent in terms of bringing all those themes together for us Southerners. And I'm sorry, it's true, out of sight, out of mind. We're not aware of just the fraction of development going on up there. But, you know, on the theme of water, I mean, I myself was just aghast and didn't really know until the summer, reading some initial news stories. On a Friday afternoon in July, in case half of you in the audience aren't even aware, the approval to Talisman Energy of use of the Williston Reservoir was granted, as I say, about the middle of July, late on a Friday afternoon. It was announced on the news. And that is an unknown, the amount of water those companies use. And as was stated in the film, that reservoir provides, it was either 25 or 30% of the electricity to the province of BC. They have granted that company full-on use of the reservoir, and they don't have a clue what the repercussions. Well, the repercussions to our energy will be.
Never mind the energy, just water for life.
There you go. Yeah. So how many people know that? How many people know that? We don't even see that in our news.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we're so hopeful that we can get it to play in other parts of the world, because, you know, Canada is one of the few places on earth where we don't place a price on water. And if people in other parts of the world see that we're squandering water at that rate without charging them for it, they're just going to go, what, are you guys kidding me? Do you know, just for interest's sake, that industry groups from all around the world come to BC because BC is such a great example of a very industry-friendly environment for them to operate in. So they like to see how to organize a regulatory environment, how we've got it here. Like, they're laughing at us. They really are, you know. Like, we're kind of suckers.
BC stands for bring cash.
Yeah. That doesn't make me feel very good. I mean, like I say, I'm not an activist, and neither is Tina. Not really. I mean, this is kind of making us very interested in this, but we came to this as just, you know, because it's a story. But we see the earnest, decent people who are affected by this, and it's just, you kind of end up feeling like you need to change. You need to change. No. Yes.
I was really impressed by the way you linked supply and demand. Too many times in the discussions I've had about the environment, people think about the bad suppliers, and they never think about themselves as being the demand. And it's with. So do you think that we are now at a time when maybe blocking streets to stop people from driving their car, or putting stickers to those stores on Robson that have those outside heaters saying that it's polluting or things like that? Do you think we are there now?
Well, I mean, Tina and I have known for years. When we take our kids to school, we'd always, Tina was way worse than I would. It would be, she'd rap on people's windows, who were sitting there texting with their V8 engines, just idling for hours outside the school, and say, do you think you could please turn your engine on? And what we noticed is that it would shame people into doing that. Likewise, if you complain to the waiter or even the manager in a restaurant about, you know, the profligate use of those natural gas burners out on the deck when nobody's out there, the waiters feel bad and they'll complain to the, you know, like, we're all decent people. It's just you kind of have to speak up, and we're so Canadian about this, right? We never complain about anything, but we kind of need to start doing that. And one thing I've noticed is that in Vancouver, for example, and I think whoever mentioned that there are, it was you over there, sir, you mentioned that there are things that are going well with respect to conservation here, and it's true. Like, you see how expensive parking is in Vancouver? Have you guys noticed over the past 2 or 3 years it's getting easier and easier to find parking downtown? Because it's just too expensive. I mean, we take the bus now when we come down here, because it's expensive, and you know what? It's fun. It's fast, and it's just, it's fun. So there's, like, I used to think, gee, riding the bus, like, that's what, I don't know, I just wasn't interested. Now, it's kind of my preferred way, well, no, my motorcycle isn't my preferred way. No, yeah, but the sympathetic hero, the protagonist in this movie has always been the Peace River. That is the protagonist in this movie. So it was not primarily a movie about energy. It was a movie about this living, beautiful system that is in jeopardy. I mean, I try to be reasonable about this stuff, as does Tina. We try to be rational and logical and not sound like hippies, right? But the fact of the matter is,
hippies are rational and logical. Let's change our minds about that.
We kind of are, right? And so I look at something like the reservoir, you know, the Williston Reservoir at low water, and I just think, my personal belief, and Tina shares this with me, is that we just don't have a right to do that. We just don't have a right to do that. When people say, well, there's already 2 dams on that river, so one more isn't going to hurt. To me, that's like saying, well, you know what it's like saying. Like, I don't want to go with the sexual analogy, but just think about it in terms of rape. One more isn't going to hurt. Can anybody in this room agree with that? One more is going to hurt a lot. Like, when we talked to David Schindler, he talked about the incredible impacts downstream on the whole Athabasca Basin by the restructuring of the flow of the river, because we dam it, and it goes against the natural way that the river was designed to flush and ebb and flow like that. And I asked myself, do we have any right to do that? And the fact that we need it is like kind of not a very good, to me, it's an insufficient reason. Like, I just think we don't have the right, and I know that there are many people in this room who believe we do not have the right to bury that valley underwater. It's just wrong. We've got to find some other way of dealing with that. Yes, Diane.
Just to follow up on the geothermal, the question about geothermal energy, absolutely. I think it's really important to know that when it comes to Site C in British Columbia, BC Hydro is not the villain. Prior to 2002, BC Hydro, in 2002, they had their mandate changed that restricted them to large hydro. But prior to that, they were investigating alternative energies. And in 2002, they created their green energy report, looking at six options, including geothermal. They were involved in mapping geothermal potential across the province, as well as wind, solar, tidal, a variety of sources. So it's not, we don't have a BC Hydro problem. We have a BC Hydro's master problem in this province. And we have enormous geothermal capability in this province, and sometimes people will say there's problems with induced seismic activity with geothermal. There's problems with induced seismic activity with reservoirs, with fracking, with conventional oil and gas industry. So when it comes to energy development, it's location, location, location. Unfortunately, locating a third dam on the Peace is not a good plan. So.
Anything else? Yes.
I've already had my shot, but if I could follow up on what Diane said. Years ago, I used to work for the Office of Energy Conservation, and we knew then, and we know now, that there's no silver bullet. It's not nuclear, it's not Site C, it's not oil and gas. It's not. What we need to do is go to those places where you can produce energy intelligently, sustainably, and efficiently with a modern energy policy in this province. And instead of giving about $300 million bucks a year in the oil and gas industry and bling, you take those monies and you develop the kind of energy that makes sense in wherever you happen to be. The Okanagan has all sorts of sunlight, doesn't it? So does the Peace River Valley, so does the Kamloops area. The coast has we have 27,000 kilometers of fantastic coastline. The alternate energy companies and businesses out there cannot get any money to develop from our government to develop those kinds of alternate energies that make some kind of sense. Now they're saying that the price of Site C has gone up to just about $8 billion. That doesn't include all of the costs by any means, and they don't even say what they are. If you took that $8 billion and made it possible for people in the Okanagan to have solar, if you took that $8 billion and put some money into the development of the technologies for tidal power, if you put some of that money into geothermal, et cetera, gave homeowners a tax break, gave homeowners an opportunity to, like the Boones are doing, putting up solar and putting energy back into the system and paying for it, then all of a sudden we have an intelligent energy policy, and we're not being driven by archaic concepts about how you make money for your friends. So that's something that people in this room can do, is they can start putting, you all can put some energy, whether it's writing the newspaper articles, talking to your politicians, talking to your friends, just getting the word out to bring BC into this century in terms of energy policy. Thanks.
Just finally, the thing that I know is that there is a political component to this, but it's not left-wing, right-wing, vote for this party or that party. I think, voting has some merit. There's always somebody you want to vote against, right? And in this case, we've just gone through a federal election. We're about to go through a provincial election where I believe that we're going to be presented with the notion that the most important issue is the economy. That's what we keep getting said to us, that economics are the most, that was our federal election. It was fought on the basis of the economy. Is that the most important issue facing us and our families? I don't think so. We're not talking about, our kids are starving to death. That's not what we mean when we mean the economy. We mean affluence. We're voting for affluence. If our economy slows down a little bit, maybe we won't be able to take that vacation in Mexico. But is that really the biggest issue that's facing us? I think what we need to do is let, especially in this coming provincial election, let our representatives know if we personally care, if we prioritize what's happening with the environment in BC, something that we should have control over. If we care about that, to let our politicians know, whatever the party that they're in, that we care about that more than the economy, right? Because that's always the argument. So let them know.
I just wanted to tell you that we're going to meet afterwards now at a bar and restaurant of our friend Peter Smith here, and it's called The Rebel. R-E-V-E-L, and that German accent. Anyways, that's 238 Abbott Street, right in Gastown. So if anybody wants to come and keep the discussion going, please join us. Bye.